So 2020 has been a rough year so far, but we're finally on the verge of a new console generation that is hyped to be one of the biggest advancements in performance yet, with the introduction of ray tracing hardware, ultra-fast SSDs, and new flashy designs that makes the designer look like the ultimate fan of the Tron movies. But why am I even buying this console? We know less about this generation than we have in the past. We still don't know what the PlayStation UI is going to look like, for example. It was teased at the release event, but that isn't exactly much, and yet for some reason I still stayed up until 6 AM only to find there's an exploit in the Argus website that means the product is sold out before it's actually linked on their website. So what's the rationale behind this? Even when we know for a fact that history tends to dictate getting an early version of a console usually results in technical issues. Console launches have historically leaned on nostalgic marketing, and this time is no different. It's a clever strategy because it makes sure you are invested far more deeply than just economically. In fact, it can be argued that this form of nostalgia can supersede any type of physical object because the focus is on the meaning and joy that object represents. The aim of the game means they aren't just selling you a console anymore, and if they were, it would be a much harder sell. Nostalgia in its most effective form sells the idea of you back to yourself. Nostalgia focuses specifically on memories where you felt a sense of belonging or togetherness in the past. You know, like with your Demogorgon fighting school friends or playing a supernatural board game that releases jungle-based hazards upon its players. When you start thinking about this with the caveman brain, it makes sense that nostalgia is a good tool for people to have. In a world where a lion could eat you at any point, trying to find a safe environment to live in is important. If you can remember a time like this before, it's easy to know what to look for next. You only need to watch the first few minutes of the PS5 reveal event to see the use of nostalgia in play. When Sony opens with a time warp sequence depicting previous instant classics, your nostalgia is going to be tingling away like,
"Oh my god, remember this game, remember that game, man, I love that."
This is a familiar motivational pull to get you interested and encourage you to find that warm fuzzy feeling again. In fact, movies and TV adverts have been employing this exact technique for years. Sony relies on your knowledge of their back catalogue because they already expect you to be associating part of your own history with their brand. The fact you understand the old games being shown to you creates this identity because you speak this language. Because you have this historical relationship with Sony, you understand what they're trying to say without them ever having to say anything. Internet Explorer did a particularly good job of this. Speaking explicitly to Gen Y audiences, it recaptures a wide range of the kind of identities you might have had throughout your millennial youth. It confirms your identity further because you know they aren't just speaking to you, but a group of people who all understand this language, and this makes you feel part of something bigger. This is shared nostalgia, and is usually pumped into things like Comic-Con, E3, and the like. The issue with nostalgia is that it never really has a firm basis in reality, and that is what the console is trying to sell you, some vague notion of nostalgia that speaks specifically to you. Nintendo Switch's advertising was really good at this. It has all these little Easter eggs that make you feel like you could be any of the characters in the advert. But what you're seeing is never really an accurate reflection of that experience. The new Motorola Razr advert is a perfect example of this. The original Razr was an iconic phone to me, and the advert totally plays on that. The first noise is that iconic, and the first shot you see of the phone is the original Motorola Razr shredding itself to become a new and improved version. Just like how Sony introduced a PlayStation 4 that looked like a PlayStation 1 to sell more PlayStation 4s, if they had actually sold a real PlayStation 1, it would have been near enough useless to the mass market. Instead, you could purchase all your nostalgic feelings in visual form whilst having the performance of a modern-day console. And let us not forget that they have also held your nostalgia hostage on their reliance of the Demon's Souls remake. A PlayStation exclusive that means that the only true way to indulge in your nostalgia is to actually buy a PS5. As one of the most hyped games for release this year, Sony have strategically ensured that they are capitalizing as much as possible on your weak nostalgic mind. And this isn't even unusual. Research has shown that people will willingly and knowingly pay double the price for an item when they are in a nostalgic mood. And you, my friend, are a nostalgic sitting duck. Visual cues are great, but Sony have also shown that audio cues are just as effective. Sounds are the most nostalgic of all things to human beings, and sounds that you heard in your late childhood or teenage years remain highly influential for the rest of your life. Listen to these sounds and see how Sony employs this idea. The sounds are almost identical. They contain one another at the very least, meaning that this new noise is already accepted by you because you already associate it with whatever you associate it with. It's really important that Sony introduced these noises to you at the release event. Of all the things you watch or see, the one thing that will evoke any nostalgia in you quickest will be the sounds. If the flashing images didn't get you, if the hardware didn't wow you, if everything else failed to get your memories flowing, the sounds will. So by opening and closing the reveal event with these noises, they've pretty much got you. And very finally is the Uncharted 4 quote we heard earlier.
You ever wonder, like, different choices, how we might have ended up?
No. I like the hand we've been dealt.
I mean, if this doesn't sell you a narrative, I don't know what does. The quote not only is from supposedly the best game ever made, but the context is essentially justifying all of your past decisions to stick with Sony. I mean, if there was ever a command or call to action, it is this. It's essentially saying, yep, all that nostalgia you are feeling, it is totally and completely legit. Even if you could do it all again, you still would, and that is why you should buy this console, because of all the hours and the memories that you have put in. So what does this all mean? Well, it means that the console that they are selling you isn't the one you are actually buying. As a consumer, you have taken a pretty big risk in the hardware vision promised by the likes of Sony, as you have very little available to you to make your purchasing decisions on. So instead, Sony provides you with something else, and that something else is you. You aren't ever remembering an objective reality of playing a video game, and unless you had a terrible time of it, you aren't even remembering the hardware, only the emotions associated with the experience of playing on it. And that's all that Sony can really offer you.